we got our first bicycle for the family. We had gotten a 20-inch bicycle from a family friend for Brian and Jill. Of course, it had training wheels when the kids were little and everything. And the time came when Brian wanted us to take the training wheels off. And we were a little concerned about if we did that, then Jill would not be able to ride it or anything like that. He was so determined, he wanted the wheels off, so we took them off. And Jill, being 2 years younger than Brian, wanted to learn how to ride the bicycle. So I took her to the backyard where the grass was soft and helped get her started at least learning her balance. Then came the time when she wanted to try it on the street. And so after we got her balance, she took off. As she took off down the street, she turned around and I saw the biggest smile on her face that, you know, she was riding by herself. It was about that time that I got to thinking, I didn't teach her how to make a turn or how to turn around. And so I go running after her down our street to try to catch up with her before she started to turn or tried to turn. Fortunately caught up with her before she turned. So that was kind of her first bike riding and bike experience. But she loved riding bikes because of, she said it always made her feel like she was flying.
Jill was born in 1980 here in Bloomington. Her brother Brian was 2 at the time. She grew up just like most of any other Bloomington kid, but as she got old enough, we started things like soccer. Eventually she did Girls Inc. Softball and basketball. And she tried out for volleyball in 7th grade, and she stayed in volleyball all through high school. Somewhere along the line, she also got interested in bicycling, and she decided to go on the Disciples bike trip. Disciples Indiana is a local biking group, and some of her friends had done Disciples, and she thought that sounded like a pretty great thing to ride her bike across America. At that point, she decided she needed a new bicycle, something that was worthy of a bike trip. So we kind of made a deal that if she would pay half, then we would pay half. And when she was trying to tell us how important it was for her to have a quality bicycle, she said, "Mom, it's an investment in my future." So she did travel with Disciples the summer of '99. And one of Jill's goals on that, I found out after the trip, she decided she was going to keep up with what they called the burners. And the burners were a group of guys that loved to stay out ahead of the pack constantly. And they took great pride in just being the best. And so she decided she was going to be one of the burners, and she did it. And she was very proud of herself, as she should be.
Of course, as she was growing up, she and her cousin Becky, the kids, as I was working at the alumni office and director of alumni family camps, they would go to the camps with me every day during the summer, Brian and Jill. And of course, Camp Brocious up in Wisconsin. Jill and Becky always planned to work together as counselors up there, along with their dream of being roommates here at IU when they became students. So that's what the summer plans were. She was finishing up her freshman year, and then she was going up to Wisconsin to work at Camp Brocious for the summer. But then May 31st came along.
On May 31st, she was supposed to work at noon that day, from noon to 3, I think. And as I was getting ready for work that morning, I knew it was going to rain, and so I asked her if she might think about mowing the yard before she went to work that day. And if she needed help getting to work quicker than she could on her bicycle, I would be willing to come pick her up and drop her off. But then I just didn't hear from her that day. And later on, Eric, her dad, called and said, "Do you have any idea where Jill is?" And I said, "Well, I know she had to work from noon to 3. He said, "Well, she was supposed to meet us." Eric and his parents, her grandparents, were gonna have lunch at Lenny's before she went to camp a few days later. And she didn't show up. Things did not seem right. I actually stayed a little late at work that day, and Eric called me again, and still no Jill. And so we started calling all of her friends, emailing anyone that we had an email address. Nobody had seen Jill that day. Eventually, we ended up calling the police because it was getting dark. And one thing Jill had told me just the week before, she had had a blowout on one of her bike tires, and we had to go get it fixed. And I said, well, Jill, do you need a headlight or anything like that on your bike? She goes, Mom, I never ride after dark. Okay. So she had told me a week before she never rides after dark, and here it is getting dark. Jill and her bike are gone. We don't know where she is. So the policeman came and took a report. We looked through her backpack, we looked through her purse, her IDs and everything were there. He said before he left, because she's 19, we don't have to file a report for 48 hours because she is an adult. But there's something wrong here. I'm going to go ahead and file this anyway. And so, we don't know what to think.
We filed the official report with the police, and they put it on their system. And then Marilyn stayed home, and I went out driving during the night over various routes that she rode. And that was kind of the start of searching and looking for Jill. The next day, I met with the police chief and the others, and that's when we made the plan to make flyers and things like that to put up. And I got in touch with the newspaper and the radio stations, and we started getting the word out like that there was a missing girl with a bicycle here in the area. And then friends and other people all started showing up to help search. And we had a group from the Alumni Association, a group from the IU Foundation that went out driving around roads and searching. We set up the main group down at Sherwood Oaks Church parking lot. It was Friday afternoon when we got a call that a bicycle had been found out on North Maple Grove Road. That's the first, what the police would call an accident site or a crime site. Crime scene was where the bicycle was found. So that's when they started inspecting and checking everything out there, and they collected the bicycle and brought it back to the police department. The days went on, and more people, and we kept searching and didn't find anything else. We had a map of Monroe County, and we literally searched every road in Monroe County. Main roads, side roads, back roads, walking fire trails, everywhere that anybody could possibly drive. We were searching, looking, trying to find anything of hers. And it was 30 months later, almost 3 years, that a couple of people up in Morgan County were walking through a brush area, and they found some remains there. And so that's when they called the police up there, and the crime group in Morgan County recovered Jill's remains. And then that was determined the crime scene, because later on through their work and their process, they determined that was where she had been killed. We finally started putting some things together, and more things started happening. And the person who committed the crime was arrested and was tried and found guilty, and is serving a 65-year sentence at the Indiana State Prison.
So several of our friends here in Bloomington, once Jill had disappeared and we knew that we weren't finding anything, they wanted to help in some way. There was a reward fund that was established so that hopefully if somebody had information, they might come forward so that they could find her. They wanted to do like a run or just something that would help the community realize that Jill is still missing. We don't know where she is and we need to find her. So what ended up happening was that because she worked at the SRSC and was involved in Hyper, it was decided that the Run for the End Zone, which had been an ongoing fundraiser, that why not just take this run that we already have and name it for Jill. So it became the Jill Bierman Run for the End Zone. And it was mainly to raise money for the Reward Fund. And that first year, it was amazing. People came from all over. There were guys that showed up from other universities that were cross-country runners. There were, of course, lots of family and friends of ours, neighbors, people from church, students. I mean, it was a total mix and quite a cross-section of Indiana, actually, for that first run. And for several years, it kind of stayed that way. All the things that people did for us in the beginning. I mean, there was a time there were yellow ribbons all on poles and trees and signs all over Bloomington. Yellow ribbons everywhere to remember Jill and to remember that she was still missing. And then for a while, we were also trying to raise money to build Jill's house, which was a residence to be built here in Bloomington to provide a place to stay for people who were getting proton radiation therapy. It took a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of volunteers and some philanthropists along the way.
And then we wanted to start a scholarship program. And so we came up with the name, the Jill Bierman Emerging Leader Scholarships, that we would give through recreational sports and at the honors banquet each year. And over 20 years, we're giving away those each year. And it's fun to think about where those students all are now or what they might be doing or things like that. I think we have some doctors in the group. We have several fitness people involved in there, and it's just exciting to see and know how that's been a help to the people.
I just love, the excitement, the dance party. It's not just a warm-up, it's a party. And afterwards too. It's not just a cool down, it's a party. And it's so fun, and I always walk the run. I'm always amazed at how much fun everybody is having during the event. And then to see, once it was a color run, to see students drop and roll through the color at the color stations. There are so many things that happen that are just so special.
The students are great, and it's been exciting to have them on the committees. It's been exciting to see the ideas they come up with the run each year. When the ideas came up with the color run, such a fun thing and fun event, and that's worked so well. And as far as student events, it's one of the larger ones. It's fun to see that and have that over campus. So it's always a great time. I know Jill would love that. With just the color in the air and the dancing and everybody having fun and just having a good time. I think Jill's story is one that is very similar to every student today. Any student walking to class, walking across campus, just making a quick run out to grab a smoothie or grab a Frosty or anything like that. It's unreal how quickly something can happen.
And that's what this is really all about, is people that care. And for me, it helps me to know other people care, but they also remember Jill, even if they didn't really know her. They know her story, and they know Jill is just like me in a lot of ways. And students will often tell me that, if that could happen to Jill, that could happen to me.